Sometimes you have to get up really high. How small you are. I'm going home now.
Chopper away.
Since I was a little kid, I was always looking up to heroes, people who left a footprint on this planet. You know, I call them map makers, people who drew the map, and then we all take that map and we follow those people. You know, like Sir Edmund Hillary, first guy on Mount Everest, Chuck Yeager, first guy who broke the speed of sound, Neil Armstrong, first guy who set foot on the moon. I always looked up to those kind of guys because I thought these are very rare individuals, people who had a vision, a dream, and then they were putting energy in a certain direction. They were putting a team together, trying to accomplish the impossible. And since I was a little kid, I was always thinking about what could I do to leave a footprint on this planet. And I never found something, you know, and I started skydiving because it was a childhood dream, and then later on, the more I practiced skydiving, the more achievements I had, the more I could see that goal coming closer to me, because I knew if I'm the one who's going to be the first person breaking the speed of sound outside of an aircraft, and faster than Chuck Yeager did in an aircraft back in the 60s, that could be a footprint, that could be map making, people who have seen this life, you know, emotionally attached, and young kids getting more interested in science and space. And it worked, you know. After I have done Red Bull Stratos, and since 2 years I'm constantly on the road. I'm talking to a lot of people, going to different schools, talking to young people, to the young generation. They always keep telling me the same thing. You know, they always say, Felix, we're so thankful for what you did, because this was our personal moon landing, because they were not born back in '69 when they landed on the moon. And since the moon landing, we never had any real big achievements on this planet anymore. And I think Red Bull Stratos definitely represents one of those achievements. And this is a great honor for me. Honestly, I always wanted to come up with a really impressive answer, but I cannot lie to you. You do not recognize when you break the speed of sound. You know, and this is something that all the scientists have been telling me before. Because normally when you create a supersonic boom, it happens way behind you. You know, if in a fighter jet, you never feel and hear your own supersonic boom, because you're constantly pushing air out of your way until you're so fast that the air cannot move out of your way fast enough, and then you compress the air. This creates the supersonic boom, but way behind you. And it's the same thing that I did. So I never did recognize that I broke the speed of sound. So when I opened my parachute, first of all, I was super happy because I'm still alive. And then I landed, and then 15 people already waiting on the ground keep telling me that they heard a supersonic boom on the ground. And I couldn't believe that, because all the scientists and all those years when we were preparing for Red Bull Stratos, they told me that because of the size of myself, I cannot create a supersonic boom that you can hear on the ground. But it did, you know, and this was amazing for me when people confirmed that they heard the supersonic boom, and we recorded that supersonic boom. So we have that sound recorded on a radio, and this is it's very impressive, because if you think about that, there's a person outside of an aircraft creating a supersonic boom. It's really impressive. The thing is, when you go up, it was not very visible on TV, but I was busy as hell. I was constantly pushing and turning all my buttons and dials inside my capsule. I had to maintain a constant pressure environment inside the capsule. I had to maintain a constant oxygen environment inside the capsule. I had to confirm that all the gauges that I'm reading it the right way, because they need to confirm that down on the ground, because they were also reading all my gauges on their instruments, and we have to make sure that they both match, because otherwise something is wrong. So I was constantly working on the way up, so I was super, super busy. I had not a lot of time to think about anything else, which was good, because on all the testings that we did on the ground, sitting in the capsule for hours and hours, I had to do a lot of endurance tests to prove out that I can spend 5 or 6 hours inside the pressure suit, which is not very easy because it kind of feels like you breathing through a pillow. So sometimes it starts to freak you out. You have nothing to do. You have all those difficult thoughts popping up once in a while. So what if my oxygen runs out? What if something goes wrong with the capsule door, you know? Because a lot of people in the past have been trying to break that record. They all failed. Some of those guys, they died trying. And all those things coming up once in a while, you know? But once you're busy and the capsule goes off the ground, you know, you have to do so many things, you cannot think about all those things. So that helps you. Also, Joe Kittringer's voice on the radio helps you a lot. Even if I was well trained to run this whole program by myself, so in case of we lose radio communication, I do not need anyone on the ground. I can do everything. I had my checklist with me. I was properly trained like an astronaut. I did 100 tests before they let me go into space. So I was well prepared, and I did not know anyone. I did not need anyone on the ground, you know. But Joe Kittringer's deep voice and knowing that this guy 55 years ago was in the same situation, you know, helps you a lot because you know you're talking to a qualified, highly qualified person who knows and understands how you feel. Then finally, when we reached float altitude at 39,000 meters and you opened that door, it's a very difficult moment because as long as you're sitting inside the capsule, it's a pressurized capsule, and your suit is pressurized, you have a redundant system, so you have double protection. The capsule protects your life, and also the pressure suit protects your life. But once you open that capsule door, you lose the protection from the capsule. So at the same moment, you're losing 50% of your protection. So there's something going on in your mind because now you're sitting there, you look outside, and this is a very unfriendly environment. It looks beautiful out there, but it could kill you within a second if something goes wrong with your pressure suit. And now at that moment, you realize my whole life depends on the pressure suit. Very difficult, you know. But then once you climb outside, it's also it's not easy because now you have been sitting in the capsule for hours and hours, and now you almost weigh twice as much weight as I normally weigh. So I had to pull myself outside the capsule, which means my pulse ratio rises from 130 beats per minute up to 186 beats per minute because it's so demanding, you know, and exhausting. But then when you're standing outside, it's a very, very peaceful moment because you look outside, it's quiet. There's no sound at all. You can see the curve of the earth down there, and you realize at that moment that you're the only person who stands at that point. No one has ever done this before, and maybe no one ever will. And then I took a deep breath because I really wanted to inhale that moment, knowing that 5 years we have been working so hard to get to that point, and then you do not want to rush it. You know, you want to stand there, and I wanted to stand there much longer. But once I have disconnected my oxygen cables from the onboard system, I only have 10 minutes of oxygen left, and that means I have to hurry. So I took a deep breath, I was standing there another 10 seconds, and then I did this one step forward, and then I created history. You do something so incredible and outstanding, and the whole world is watching this, you know. Everybody's going to be a live eyewitness in that moment. And you cannot risk that you just getting outside and then nothing pops up in your mind, you know. And that's the reason why I was really thinking carefully what I'm gonna say if I'm standing there. And we all remember when Neil Armstrong said, you know, a small step for man, big step for mankind. The same thing is here, you know. But once you get up there, you realize how small you are, and that's the reason why I said, okay, sometimes you have to go up really high to understand how small you are, because you can see planet Earth down there, and you're all by yourself. There's no help, nothing else, you know, so you're all by yourself. And at that moment you realize it's just you, and you become really small and humble at that point. But then, you know, when you do this one step forward, you're coming home. It feels like coming home because you have left the Earth 3 hours before, you're going higher and higher and higher, you reach this point, but then you wanted to come back. You know, it's very beautiful to see the Earth from above, but we all belong to the Earth, and that's the reason why I said I'm coming home now. And honestly, this step was a much easier one for me, because once you do this one step forward, you're falling down, and with every foot that you fall, every meter that you fall down there, you're falling towards more pressure, towards more oxygen, and towards medical treatment. if something goes wrong, in 9 minutes you're back on the ground and people can put their hands on you and help you out. In case if something goes wrong and I cannot jump, I have to remain seated in the capsule. And this would mean you spend another 50 minutes to come back, because now they release the capsule from the balloon, the capsule falls down for a couple of seconds. The parachute will not open in that moment because there is no air to open the parachute. And then the parachute, if it opens properly, it slows down the capsule, could also shake in free fall. So there's so many things that could go wrong if you have to remain seated. So it's much easier, safer, and faster if you step off, because that means 9 minutes later you're on the ground. And with this in mind, you know, it made it a lot easier to do this step. Well, I wouldn't compare these two things, because setting foot on the moon, actually being on a different planet and seeing the Earth completely as a round ball is something completely different. You know, I mean, even if I was a little bit higher up and I could see the curve of the Earth already, I was still above the Earth, but I never set foot on another planet. And I think this is a completely different ball game, you know. Also coming back, because, you know, you have to keep in mind, if I do something wrong, even if I die, I'll land on Earth. So you can bury my body because it's landing on the Earth, even if it's smashed and whatever. But if you're not able to leave the moon anymore, you know, that means you're going to stay there forever. So when you just imagine Neil Armstrong's kids, you know, they're standing on the Earth, they look up to the moon at the full moon night, and you know their father is still sitting there. Maybe in the same shape, because if there's no oxygen up there and he's in his pressure suit, he might look the same like 50 years before, you know, I don't know. But this is a very strange thought, just thinking about that. So I would never compare the moon landing. Even from a technical perspective, it's way more difficult to go to the moon. But from an emotional standpoint, you can definitely compare these two things, you know, because this is what the impression that people gave me the last 2 years. A lot of young people said, Felix, this was our personal moon landing, and this is definitely the greatest honor that you can have. Well, I always said if Red Bull Stratos is successfully completed, it's time to move on. Because I'm 45 years old now, luckily survived 25 years of extreme sports, and even if I always prepared myself in the best possible way, you still need a lot of luck to survive. And I don't think it's getting better. I think everything that I had in mind, all my dreams, all my visions that I had in relationship to skydiving are successfully completed, and now it's time for a second part of my life, and this is becoming a good mountain rescue helicopter pilot. That's the reason why in 2006 I did my helicopter license in Los Angeles. Now I'm a commercial helicopter pilot, and I'm constantly working on my skills, because in the future I really want to put my skills into public service and mountain rescue people who are in desperate need of help.
And Felix is back to her safely, the new world record holder.
In 40 years from now, I would love to sit in there, probably at the age of Joe Kiddinger, and there's a young kid sitting right next to me asking for advice, says I'm going to help that kid to break my record. That's what I wanted to do in the future.
Rock and roll! Thank you so much for being part of my dream. Really appreciate that. We made it. Yeah!